Hello there. Perhaps you're working with Elegoo Mars or any cubic photon or something similar, and you've eventually gotten to the point where your FEP is so damaged you've had something get stuck there, or you use the wrong tool to try to clean it, and in this case it's going to be difficult to see in the camera, but not only is that piece stuck there, but the FEP is pretty well torn up in that area, and this is no longer going to work okay. I've used this FEP for quite a while and nursed it along, but it's time to say goodbye. It's not an intimidating process, you know, to change this. It's actually fairly simple. Just take your time, be careful. Really, all you got to start by doing is flipping it over, and there's a little subplate assembly that's attached in the back. You just need to grab yourself your Allen key and disassemble. In this stage, it's not really important on which screw you start on and whether or not you loosen everything a little bit or at a time or anything like that. Just go ahead and take all of them out. Big thing, don't lose your screws or you're done until you get replacements. In this case, the resin vat I'm working on replacing the FEP is for the original Elegoo Mars LCD printer. It has been a learning experience for sure. I know there's a lot of different competition, the Longer Orange, the Anycubics, I'm trying to think, I think even Creality might have one of these in just, you know, lower cost price range. I'm not talking about your Form Labs and your, you know, more expensive, multiple thousands of dollars printers. I have been quite pleased with this, and I have printed things both as a hobby, you know, of course printing your Baby Yodas, and I'm a big comic book guy, so I like to print, you know, comic book characters, and you know, I do like D&D and Pathfinder. I haven't got into a lot of doing the minis, but I like knowing that I have the capability should I ever decide to get into that. I've already bought enough minis that are not painted that I don't need to start printing my own quite yet. But knowing that I have the ability is great. Speaking of not losing screws, there one goes. Okay. Now once you get the last screw of this undone, this is just a little subplate assembly that has this FEP sandwiched in between. So it's something that you can just take the whole thing out. Now, probably a few of you more experienced viewers will say, hey, there's still some resin on there. Why are you not wearing your nitrile gloves? Well, you probably have a point. And if I start getting to the point where it looks like I'm going to be getting resin on my hands, I'll quickly go clean them and put my gloves on. But I think for the most part, all this resin in here is pretty dried up. So now you can see it's loosening. Final screw out, and here we are. Now I can kind of just gently push up, and now this whole piece comes out. So, you know, hey, look at that, a little bit of wetness on there. I'm gonna pause this, wash my hands, and get some gloves. Boom, and we're back, and much safer now. So I have this. You can go ahead and move this out of the way. I'll clean that up a little bit better in a moment. But now you have this layer here. Or this plate. We'll just flip it over and find my next Allen key that is appropriate size. And we have a lot of screws to undo. So this would be a good time for you guys to go ahead and get your coffee, unless, you know, I'm nice and I edit this so that I speed this part of the process up. Again, doing our disassembly here, it's really not all that important on what order you take the screws out, loosening all of them a little bit. You know, we're just doing disassembly, so not a big deal. The replacement FEP layers that I purchased. So I live in the USA and use Amazon.com for several of my purchases, and I was able to get a pack of 3 of them. This is my second time replacing the FEP. I think it was like around $12, $13 for 3 pieces when I bought them several months ago. I haven't gone on lately to look at the price, but these ones here are from Colorbot. They actually got some installation steps printed right on the outside. You know, simple steps. It's one of those things that, even unless you're going and watching a video and or just slowly going through it and figuring it out yourself, which is what I did, you're not going to really just know. Really, I'm not, if you've scanned through my channel, I don't do a lot of videos like this, but maybe I'll do more in the future. This is something I had to do anyways, and I thought, why not throw my camera on a little mount and I can record myself while I'm doing it, because I was going to do it anyhow, and I can talk to people like they're not here instead of just talking to myself. And if I give somebody a hand in learning how to do this, that would be great. And like I said, this is only my second time doing it, so maybe you've done this many times and you'll see something I do and you will say, boy, that's really it's really not the best way to go about that, and you could leave a comment below and correct my ignorance, as well as everybody else who happens to watch this video. If I see anything, comments that are showing some glaring mistake that I've made, I'll make sure to correct that. If you guys are like me anyhow, while I'm working on my 3D printing or other random making projects, a lot of times I have YouTube videos on in the background, just because you never know what you're going to pick up. You know, I've done a lot of 3D printing now. I mean, I've only been doing this for a little less than a year, but both FDM and resin. But I've learned a ton between experience directly, my successes and failures, and watching videos. So even if I see a video that I'm 99% sure I already know how to do this, I don't really need to watch it. I don't need somebody to teach me. I know what I'm doing. I might throw it on in the background anyhow and watch it anyhow while I'm kind of doing something else, because every now and then you'll see a tip, you'll see something that somebody does, a method that they have that you're like, well, actually I'm gonna shamelessly steal that idea and make the next time I work on that a little bit better. Or maybe you see somebody doing something a certain way and you're like, oh, that is a better way, but it would be even better if I added this little change to what they did. Ideas can spawn other ideas. Alright, now we have that all the way, all the screws out, so now this plate and the other plate are separate, and the FEP is now loose. So you can see this FEP has seen some service. There's been a lot of hours of printing on this, probably, I don't know, a couple hundred or something. And at the cost of a replacement FEP layer, once it gets to the point where there's no sense nursing it along, just trash it and get yourself done. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab one of these FEPs out. So we're going to see. There we are. The FEP is nicely stored inside this little Mylar plastic sleeve. Just go ahead and peel those outer layers off. And you'll be, minus the static electricity, left with exactly what you need. Probably pretty hard to see that perfect good thing. Now the first thing you're probably going to notice is, boy, this thing is way bigger than I need it to be. don't worry, that's a good thing. So just put it back together, set that FEP in there, and set your other plate on, carefully aligning it. You know, this is the part where maybe several people have their own kind of preferred methods of getting your screws in there, because you're going to notice that there's no holes where my screws need to go. Right? So what I do is I take the next size down of Allen wrench, or maybe a really tiny screwdriver, and I pop that hole in. Yeah, you know what? That's a little bit too big yet. Let me try. Let's see. Bear with me while I find a better tool for this job. Alright, and one of my 3D printing purchases, this little Allen key screwdriver came with it. So go ahead and, you know, now you can kind of just pop that hole in. I would pop one hole in at a time because you don't want to put more holes in your FEP than you need to assemble it. So pop a hole in, get her lined up, put that screw in there. And I wouldn't tighten it all the way, just kind of almost snuggish, right? Just a little bit there. So I got one down in this corner, so I'll probably hop up into this corner, grab my tool, make sure my holes are lined up pretty well, and pop that little hole in, holding a little pressure on this time so it doesn't float away on me. So now that once you get everything kind of picture framed in, you know, maybe one screw on each corner, and you know that the plates aren't going to kind of wander around relative to each other, you probably could go ahead and then just pop the rest of your holes in, which I will very likely do, so I don't have to keep on picking tools up and setting them down. Make this process just a little bit more efficient. The key is taking your time, making sure your threads are going in right, you're not stripping anything. We'll make those four corners just a little bit more on the snug side now, to just kind of make sure that nothing's going to float around on me while I'm finishing up the rest of my screws. You notice in this one, no real particular reason I didn't start in the exact corner. It's not that important. Alright, now that I've got everything framed in, everywhere, now not these holes, right, but everywhere there's one of these holes, I'm poking where I'm going to use the screws to assemble the two plates together. Punch, punch. Now in the manner that I'm punching this, you're actually going to end up getting a little bit of FEP feeding down into those screw threads. In my opinion, that's fine. That'll just keep a good seal, keep things good and tight. Less chance of leakage. Now you've got that, I'm going to go ahead and get all of these screws in. Not tight, just kind of snuggish. Snugging all of these screws in right away or sequentially and carefully is not really that critical in this step. The more critical is when we get to the next step, when I'm attaching this little subplate back into the resin vat frame. That you definitely want to carefully go around the reservoir around this frame bit by bit, and not just tightening each screw all of the way. because when you're doing this next one, what happens is you're actually creating the tension and forming the shape to get that kind of really tight FEP. And if you don't get that good tension, if you distort or bend your FEP in a way that it's not tight, it will not work well, and you'll find you'll have to replace the FEP again very soon. There will be a bit of a step in between this step here and that next step. So because the FEP is, and intentionally is, much larger than the frame, we need to trim that so it's not in the way. I will likely go find a hobby knife to trim that out. You can use whatever you like, but something very sharp. Obviously try to keep the red juice inside your fingers while you're working with razor blades. If we were in an OSHA approved environment, whatever hand didn't have the razor on it would have to be wearing a cut glove. And it wouldn't be the worst idea for me to get myself a cut glove. I'm usually pretty careful and safe when it comes to razors, but if you use them long enough, you will find yourself filleting a part of your hand, which is never fun. It's always annoying to stop a project because you're just bleeding all over the place and you gotta go stitch yourself up. You might say to yourself, nah, I'm always careful. I never cut myself. Only idiots do that. Well, working on something a little tired, or your blade's maybe a little bit too dull and you're putting just a little bit too much pressure, and you have a momentary lapse of thought when you got your hand here instead of here while you're pushing your blade up this way, and one slip is all she takes. Okay, I'm about to get my last screw in here, and like I said, I was intentionally not tightening every screw all of the way. Now I'm going to go ahead and make sure that everything is tight. So I'm going to say I'm going to mark this as my start corner, work my way around. You don't have to go crazy, just pretty snug, right? These are tiny screws. You're threading into aluminum plate, so if you go reefing on it, you're going to strip them, and then you will be buying probably a new resin vat, unless you can find these plates for sale somewhere. Everything feels good. Nothing is stripped. And if you're a truly noob and you don't know what stripped means, what that means is you torqued it so hard that you actually either ripped the threads off your screw, or more likely you ripped the threads off from the internal threaded object, in this case the aluminum plate. Now these look like they're, I'm not sure that they are, but they look like they're stainless steel screws, so if you're going to damage something, it's going to be this plate. Alright, so now this is all set, and I've got this extra layer on the outside, so I'm going to go find myself a razor blade and trim that flush with the edges. Alright, so now that we've got myself a knife, I was not able to find my hobby knife, but I do have this guy right here, so we're going to go ahead and just slice that nice and flush. Like I mentioned, not wearing a cut glove, so take care with how you're doing it to avoid slicing yourself. Always cut away from your body. left over, you can just kind of shave those edges. Rounded corner areas here that I'll have to carefully trim off. Pardon for not getting all these details on the camera. Do the best I can here. Alright, I think that ought to work. We have our FEP layers now on, and trimmed, and reasonably tight, but you can see it's still kind of loose. You might think, oh, did I not get enough tension on there? That's nothing to be worried about, because the tension is really going to come as you place this in here. Now, the orientation that you put this back in does matter. So this side that has the screw heads on, that bonds these two plates together, there's no countersink on these mount holes, right? So if you flip it over, you'll see there's a countersink that matches with your screw heads. That is where it goes. Now, this way or this way, there's no difference there. So you don't have to be concerned about that. So you're gonna, first thing you're gonna see is like, this doesn't go down all the way because the FEP is contacting this edge of the plate. So that's why we're gonna have to slowly screw this in all around the perimeter so that we put even tension around this, like we're putting the skin on a drum. So we can, first thing we're gonna have to do is punch those holes. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that. So I have a hole for my screws to get through. Okay. And grab your Allen key and the screws that you were using from the disassembly process. And go ahead and just press those screws in place. Get yourself ready to start the tightening. Okay. Now I would just kind of get each one just kind of started. Get started in and just start to make contact with that plate. You don't really want to put a whole lot of tension on anything yet. Just enough to kind of get yourself your starting point. Okay, and once you've got that begun, you just kind of want to go down a little with a screw and just start working your way around. Now, technically, it may be better to do this, you know, valve cover gasket style, where you come up with a tightening pattern. But I think as long as you're careful and you're not tightening too much at a time, and you work your way around in a circle, I think that should be fine. The old saying goes, Haste makes waste. You think you're wasting your time slowly going around and tightening these just a little bit at a time in each screw. Try wasting the time of wrecking a FEP and having to start all over. And this may kind of answer your own question if you were pulling off that FEP before and you're like, how do I get this rectangle form to take place around the bottom of my reservoir? Well, this is it. Slowly tightening these screws is what's going to cause that shape to take form as the FEP conforms to the bottom of the reservoir. Well, I just felt that screw hit bottom, so we're getting very close now. So you can tell because it just stops. Don't go crazy and over torque them, because you will, again, stainless screws, aluminum plates, you will strip your screw holes. Okay, so remember this one was all the way. Just going around it one more lap. I think I got a couple screws that need to go down a little bit. That one more so than the others. There we go. And there you are. One completed FEP swap. So like I say, super tight, almost like a drum skin now. Well, I hope that you got something out of watching this. If nothing else, it was something nice in the background while you're drinking a coffee and working on your next 3D printing project. Have a great day. And if like I said before, if you have any comments or notes or thoughts or advice, please leave a note below.